Okay, good afternoon and welcome, front room. Deputy Mayor Tom Hutchinson, and I'm Chair of the Committee of Adjustment meeting. Item number 1 on today's agenda is we will be calling the meeting to order. This is the May the 2nd, 2023 Committee of Adjustment meeting. We do have quorum. As indicated, I have 2 signed in. I believe Mr. Councilor Shees or Member Shees there. He's on camera. And Member Hutchinson are virtual. Member Townsend is regrets for today. For this meeting, we're using both audio and video. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the West Grey website at www.westgrey.com. The technology for this meeting is being managed by the West Grey staff. Please refrain from clicking buttons throughout the meeting unless prompted. And before we continue, I'm asking Ms. Ferguson to provide an overview and some key points for the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair Hutchinson. Before I begin, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter meeting ID 871-80700. For members of the public that this meeting is being held in 2 locations, on Zoom as well as being live on YouTube. Both members of staff and council have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software. Council and staff will be raising their hands to speak. For the public, if you require any at any point during this meeting, you can send a chat message to me, Sheila Ferguson, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist.
Thank you. Item number 2 is the purpose of the meeting. Ms. Mulligan, please provide your comments.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The purpose of this Committee of Adjustment meeting is to allow the presentation of applications for minor variances and applications for consents to sever, and to allow interested members of the public the opportunity to ask questions or offer comments with regard to the applications. A public registry is available for each application by email at sferguson@westgrey.com. And if any member of the public would like to be notified in writing of the decision on one of the applications, they are to provide their name and mailing address by email or via the meeting chat function for the corresponding registry. This will also entitle one to be advised of a possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearing in the event the decision on the application is appealed.
Thank you. Item number 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof. Members of the committee, is there anything to declare at this time? If one should arise during the meeting, you can certainly declare at that time. So seeing none from the members, I will move on to item number 4. And that's approval of the minutes, from the April 4th, 2023 Committee of Adjustments meeting. Ms. Mulligan, could you please read the recommendation?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. The recommendation is that the Committee of Adjustment hereby approves the minutes of April 4th, 2023 as presented.
Could I get a mover for, okay, I see Member Forrester and followed by Member Eccles. Thank you. Comments or questions from the committee members on the minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. I see all members are in favor. There's none opposed. That motion is carried. Moving on to our first item on the agenda is item 5 is minor variance application number A02 2023-229 Forler Street. Item 5.1 is Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, if you could please read your report for minor variance A02 2023, including any written comments you may have received for this item. Planner Spencer.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the application is to vary the provisions of zoning bylaw number 37, 2006, which would permit the following. To vary the provisions of section 12.25, which permits a reduced exterior side yard setback of 4.5 meters or 7.6 meters is required, the effect of which will permit the construction of an additional residential unit on the property. Planning staff have received comments from the County of Grey in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. No comments from the public in support or opposition to the application have been received. I'm happy to provide any further clarification as committee requires. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. It'll take us to 5.2 on today's agenda, and that's verbal comments. There's 2 parts to this portion of the meeting. First one is the committee members. Once that's completed, we will go to the public. So under 5.2.1, committee members, is there any comments or questions at this time? Oh, Go ahead, Councillor or Member Forrester. Jeffrey's left.
Oh, I was just wondering if there was water and sewer around to this, where the second unit's gonna go, and if there was a potential to sever this lot in the future.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So this additional residential unit will be required to have water and sewer connections. It must be on full services in accordance with Bill 23. The request to sever the property has not been reviewed at this time and is not the desire of the applicant that I understand at this point. Thank you.
Anything further? I see we've lost Member Shea. Or do you have him? Oh, okay, thank you. Oh, there it is. All right, is there any other comments or questions from the committee members? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to 5.2.2. That's public comments. Ms. Ferguson, if you could just let the public know how they can participate in this part of the meeting. And we will have to do this again for each application in case any late joiners.
It should be noted for this portion of the meeting that public participation must be done through the Zoom meeting software and cannot be done through the live stream on YouTube. For members of the public waiting to participate in this portion of the meeting, you may do so in one of two ways. The first being, if you have joined us via phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you'd like to speak. If you've joined us using the Zoom meeting software, you can also raise your hand, usually located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen with a blue or yellow icon. And at this time, Chair Hutchinson, I'm not seeing any of the public wishing to participate online.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not seeing any hands in the public here wishing to speak to that item. Good, okay. So that'll take us to 5.3, and that's decision by the committee members. What direction would the committee like to take with this application? And if you could just include the recommendation that's here, we could read that out as well, or if you got something different, and I will be looking for a mover, please. I will take Member Eccles as the mover. Go ahead, please. Apologize. I can get it moved and I can send it over for reading. We'll move that. Can I get a seconder, please? Okay, Member Noon, excuse me. Planner Spencer, could you read the recommendation, please? What we call the vote?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. The recommendation is that in consideration of staff report A02-2023, Pelishok, Ken, and Shelley, that the Committee of Adjustment approve the minor variance as it is considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw. It's considered a desirable use of the property and is minor in nature.
Thank you. Is everyone clear on the recommendation? Do you have any comments or questions before we call the vote? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the recommendation, you raise your hands, please. I see all members are in favor, none opposed. This motion is carried. That'll take us to item 5.4, which is next steps. Planner Spencer, please.
With the decision of the Committee of Adjustment, a notice of decision will be provided to the applicant, which will entail a 20-day appeal period. Provided no appeals are received, the applicant will be advised that they can proceed to their building permit.
Thank you. Okay, next on the item or on the agenda, sorry, is number 6, minor variance application A03 2023 495 Queen Street. 6.1 is Planner Spencer's report. If you could please read your report for minor variance A03 2023, including any written comments you may have received for this. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this application is to vary the provisions of zoning bylaw 37, 2006 to permit the following. To vary the provisions of section 13.223 for a reduced front yard setback of 6.5 meters, whereas 7.6 meters is required. To vary the provisions of 13.225 for a reduced exterior side yard setback of 4.5 meters, whereas 7.6 meters is required. Vary the provisions of 13.226 for a reduced rear yard setback of 1.2 meters, whereas 7.6 meters is required. And finally, section 13.228 for an increased lot coverage of 47.5%, whereas a maximum of 45% is permitted. The effect of which will permit the construction of a semi-detached dwelling unit. Just of note for committee, just as a note on this particular property, these are odd variations to the provisions of the bylaw because it is on a corner lot. In addition, comments have been provided from the County of Grey the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, and Enbridge Gas. Additional comments were received from the public from an adjacent neighbor who is concerned about any potential damage to their fence that abuts the two properties and would like to discuss this with the applicant at their leisure. No further comments were received, but I'm happy to clarify further as required. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. It takes us to 6.2, verbal comments. Again, two parts of this part of the agenda. First one's committee members' comments, and that would be followed by the public members. So 6.2.1, committee members. Is there any comments or questions from the committee members on this application? And I do see Member Hutchison, is that your hand up? You want to just raise your hand, maybe? Doug, that would be easier to see.
No problem. Yes, my hand's up. So a couple questions. One is there are a number of large spruce trees on this property. I presume that they're going to have to come down in order to do this, or not. There's a fair number of them on the south west corner. Do we know anything about the spruce trees?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. There will be tree removal in order to accommodate the development. That is anticipated by the application. There's no way to get around that.
Yeah, there's some fairly large ones there. Okay, and then the other one was the concern from the neighbor. We had a letter regarding the fencing to the south or to the north. So I presume in the building permit agreement that they'll be cognizant of the fence that is there and make sure that there's no damage, or that they accommodate for that fence to the north.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So in this instance, there's nothing under the building code that would require something as part of the permit for that fence. It's more of a neighborly issue to ensure that there isn't damage to the fence, because the adjacent landowner did purchase the fence and install it at their own expense.
So hopefully the developer understands it. And I guess my last comment had to do with Park Street, being that it's on Park Street West, that there will be construction on that road at one point. So that's something good for them, the builder, to know in the future that there may be some work on that road done. Thank you.
I will take that final as just more of a statement than a question then, Member Hutchinson.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions from the committee members before we turn it to the public? Seeing none, then we will go to 6.2.2, and this is public comments. And again, I'm going to ask Ms. Ferguson to explain to the public how they can attend or ask questions virtually, as we have nobody in attendance in the actual chambers here. Ms. Ferguson, go ahead, please.
Hutchinson, members of the public waiting to participate in this portion of the meeting, you may do so in one of two ways. First being, if you have joined the phone line, you can press your hand and that will let us know that you'd like to speak. If you've joined us using the Zoom meeting, you can also raise your hand, located in the bottom right-hand corner of the blue or yellow icon. And at this time, I'm not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak online.
Okay, thank you. And we have nobody attending in person that would like to speak to this item today as well. So what direction would the committee like to take with this one under 6.3? I can have Planner Spencer read the recommendation. We can do that, or I can get for a mover right now. How would you like this handled? Member Eccles, go ahead, sir.
I found it this time. So that in consideration of staff report AO3 2023 Rice Mitchell, the Committee of Adjustment approves a minor variance as it considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, is considered the desirable use of property and is minor in nature. So moved.
Thank you, Member Eccles. Is there a seconder, please? I see Member Hutchinson's hand up. We have it moved in second. Is everyone clear on the motion?
Sorry to interrupt. I'm late to the meeting. I just came out of another meeting late. I did not hear the motion.
Okay, one moment, please. I would require that you would state your name for the record, please.
Sorry about that. Shireen Mote, owner of 526 County Street South.
And you're calling in on, well, thank you for joining us, but you're calling in on item AO3 2023 Queen Street.
I assume that would be it. We're still new, so I am not 100% about if that's the lot number. I'm at the corner of Park and Countess.
Okay, I apologize. I couldn't hear where you're at the corner of.
Park and Countess Street.
Just west, the next one west. Yeah, next street west. Yeah, next street west.
Okay, so you're looking to have the recommendation read back so that you understand, or is that what your question was?
Yes, please. Yes,
Do you have
please.
a comment? Okay, do you have a comment though, before we call this motion? Because once the motion's called and it's voted on, we won't be going back for discussion. Do you have a question or a comment before I call that?
Not at the moment.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll just ask Planner Spencer, or Member Eccles, would you like to read it again? Yeah, we're gonna read it and then we have it moved and seconded. And then I'll ask if you have, well, we're actually at the point where it's the committee members only, our public portion's closed, and then I will be calling the vote unless you have a specific question. And I probably will allow that for today.
Okay, thank you.
Just Member Eccles is checking for it. One moment, please.
So that in consideration of staff report A03.2023, Rice, Mitchell, the Committee of Adjustment approves the minor variance as it considered to maintain the general intent and purpose of the official plan and zoning bylaw, is considered a desirable use of the property, and is minor in nature.
Thank you, Member Eccles. Do you have a question germane to that recommendation?
Sorry, I was just waiting to be unmuted. I have no objection to that, as I don't understand what, to be honest, when reading the lot diagram, we were not sure how it affects us. So we were trying to figure out that part. But if it's to maintain, I guess I have no objection to it.
Okay, thank you. Well, I do have this motion or the recommendations moved and seconded. Is there any comments or questions from the committee members? Okay, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand. I see all members are in favor. There's none opposed. That motion is carried. And I'm going to go to 6.4. Planner Spencer, what are the next steps, please?
Through you, Mr. Chair, following the decision of committee, the applicant will be notified. There'll be 20 days for an appeal period. Provided no appeals are received, the applicant will be advised that they can obtain their building permit.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Okay, so we're on to item number 7 on our agenda, consent to sever number B09-2023, 281-320 Norman B. Bentinck Town Line. 7.1 is Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, if you can just read your report, please, to consent to sever B09-2023. If you include any written comments you may have received. Planner Spencer.
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose and effect of the application is as follows: to sever approximately 4.2 hectares of rural land and retain approximately 21 hectares of rural land, the effect of which will create a new non-farm parcel with approximately 166 meters of frontage on the Norman B. Bentinck Town Line. There is history of this file. A consent application was previously denied by Committee of Adjustment on November 10th of 2020, file B08-2020. The applicant's agent subsequently appealed the decision for denial to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The hearing on the matter was held on April 15th of 2021. A decision on the appeal was issued by the Ontario Land Tribunal on October 8th of 2021, allowing the appeal. A case management conference was conducted on November 11th, 2021, which defined the conditions and timeline associated with fulfillment of the conditions by the applicant and their agent. The conditions were required to be completed by October 8th, 2022, or the decision implicitly stated from the OLT, the application was to consider to be refused. The recommendation still continues to remain the same, that the application be refused at this time. Comments have been provided by the County of Grey, in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. Comments have also been provided by Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, who have advised that an archaeological study is required prior to the passage of a consent application. Planning staff will answer any points of clarification that have been provided at this point in time. No comments from the public in support or opposition to the file have been received. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. All right, so that takes us to 7.1, or I'm sorry, 7.2, verbal comments. Again, there's two parts to this portion of the meeting. First one is committee members' comments. And once we've completed that, we'll go to the public members, whether they're going to speak virtually or in public. So under 7.2.1, committee members, is there any comments or questions on this application? And I do see Member Hutchinson. Go ahead, please.
Your lips
Our
are-
our favorite thing there, Member Hutchinson, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry, try that again. So my first question is, I guess, is why our staff is requesting denial. But when I look at, I'm looking at the documents in our public meeting that we had from this morning. And I see that they went to the OLT previously, and they were given a timeline to go ahead based on that. I'm curious why they weren't able to meet the deadline because now they're sort of starting the process over again. Do we know what happened there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there'll be an opportunity for the applicant who is present in the room and their agent to define what the limitations on their part were to fulfill the conditions. It was not a staff issue.
Okay, so also in that report that was in the public meeting from the OLT, that they suggested that it says that Saugeen Valley did not have concerns related to the hazard lands, and that there was a building envelope available, and that the aggregate, apparently there was some concerns with the being on an aggregate resource, but it says that the site was depleted, and that there was also both Saugeen Valley and the NVCA provide natural heritage review found that the proposed lot creation will have no negative impacts on natural heritage. So I'm curious, given that those statements were made, why we're refusing this applicant.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the position is a policy matter. My position based on the first application that was before us has not changed. The inability to determine that the aggregate has been depleted. There is a report that's quite dated that was not really brought into evidence as part of the Ontario Land Tribunal. We're not satisfied that that adequately represents whether or not that had been depleted entirely on the site. And as you know, the provincial policy statement, in addition to the County of Grey official plan, requires that aggregate be preserved for future extraction. In addition, there are a number of natural heritage features on the site. I think we have to bear in mind that the changes to the Conservation Authorities Act have changed the way that SVCA will be able to comment with anything with respect to natural heritage features. And that's why you'll see a difference in those opinions. My opinion remains unchanged from the first application in 2020.
Okay, I guess I'll wait for further comments and see where we go. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I will ask your question there when we turn it over to the public there, Member Hutchinson, for an input from the proponent that's here. So is there any other comments or questions from committee members? And I do see Member Noon. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Regarding the Saugeen Valley Conservation, Spencer, you had noted that there was changes brought forward with the way the Saugeen Valley can or can't make comments now, but their comments were made before that deadline on this specific property. So why would they not continue to be still valid? I thought there was a timeline that they were still acceptable.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the deadline for those changes is actually January 1st. So this is a second set of comments that have come January 1st of 2023.
So in respect to that, why wouldn't we support their previous comments as, because they were the expertise at that time? Why would now, because it's a new application, that the mindset of that changes from the municipality versus the Saugeen Valley's comments?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the comments from that period of time are under a different policy regime. It's not that we don't support the comments of the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. In fact, I think I take it a step further to identify that there are natural heritage features that they can no longer speak to.
Any further? Member Newman, it's good. Okay. Any comments, questions? Member Eccles, go ahead, please.
The county, and I'm not, can you walk me through the rounding up or rounding down, or I don't quite get that. I haven't been able to figure that out. It's 50 hectares, but we're only dealing with basically 25 hectares. And anyways, maybe you can make some clarification out of those numbers for me, Lorley.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. So when you're considering under OPA 11, whether to prorate up or prorate down, have to be within 15%. So there's certain policies within the official plan that define the density. So for example, there's policies for 20 hectare original Crown surveys, 40 hectare original surveys, et cetera. There is no policy that directly relates to this particular parcel based on its odd size, essentially from the Crown survey. So essentially it has to be prorated up or prorated down. In this case, it's prorated down to be within 15%. And that's where the density is limited based on the original Crown survey and the county plan.
Well, Member Eccles, do you need a couple minutes to think about that one?
Yeah. It's
Come back to you.
It's a numbers thing.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the committee members before we turn to the public? And when we do get to the public portion, we do have a presentation here. So if there is a question during that time, I think we'll probably allow that this afternoon just to, it's quite an extensive file and there's quite a bit here. So what I'll do now is we'll go to 7.2.2 public comments. And if I can get Ms. Ferguson to explain how anybody attending virtually can participate, and the public portion is quite easy. They simply raise their hand in here, take the podium, state your name for the record, and then we go from there.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson. For members of the public waiting to participate, if you have joined us via phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. After speaking, or if you raised your hand in error, you can press *9 again to lower your hand. If you've joined us using the Zoom meeting software, you can also raise your hand, usually located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen with a blue or yellow hand icon. And at this time, Chair Hutchinson, I'm not seeing any members of the public wishing to speak online.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Ferguson. I too don't see anybody in the, oh, sorry. Yes. If you would like to take the podium, I assume you're here to speak to that. And if you could state your name for the record. And before you get going there, Mr. David, I do have the one question from Member Hutchinson that I may ask you. So if you could just log in first, we'll go from there, please.
Hello, my name is Glenn David, and I'm here to speak on behalf of Dean Grind.
Okay, thank you very much and welcome this afternoon to our meeting. The one question we had from Member Hutchinson, would you like to ask it? The question I heard was, can he explain the delays from their end, or is that clear enough, or?
Well,
Is
yeah.
that covered? You want to go ahead and ask, and then we can move on to the presentation.
They had just said they had gone to the OLT, and the OLT had said that they had sort of granted permission to move forward. And they gave them a deadline of October, I believe it was, of 2022, but they didn't make that deadline. So I'm curious what happened? Like, why are we, now you're sort of starting over again. So could they explain that?
Mr. David, go ahead, please.
Basically, because COVID played a large role, but as we all know, for the last 2 to 3 years, it's been very difficult to get anything done. And in the presentation, I can show that I contacted the surveyor right after we were given consent but they were booked basically for a year. So it was all delays. There was nothing that I could get done on time. And it's entirely not my fault, but it was beyond my control to get everything done. And in hindsight, I should have asked for an extension from the OLT, but I didn't. And when I handed the paperwork in, I honestly didn't realize I was past the date because this has just been dragged out. We're coming up on 3 years here for a severance that could have been done in 6 or 8 months. So it's just been a difficult time, and the timing couldn't have been worse because the provincial government has extended the 1-year deadline to 2 years now because of the reasons that I'm stating.
Okay, thank you. Do you have a follow-up question for that one there, Member Hutchinson, before we turn the, pardon me?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. David, thank you for answering that question from Member Hutchinson. So you can go ahead with your presentation, please.
So basically, this started out, Dean asked me as a friend to help him out, and I've done 4 or 5 severances in this municipality and I've had no trouble. And this one has just been very difficult, and there's a few matters to bring up, but basically when we didn't meet the deadline, I was hoping the OLT would extend it, but they said they had no jurisdiction. So one question I have for the committee is, the OLT recommended I ask the municipality for an extension. So is there a possibility that we could get an extension because the conditions have all been met? I just ran out of time. So instead of start another application, it would be nice just to finish this one.
Okay, so that is, I believe that's going to be digging in deep to a planning matter, and I will refer to our planner for some direction on that to the committee, please.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So we did receive legal advice indicating we have no jurisdiction to extend an order by the Ontario Land Tribunal, hence this application before us today. I did speak with the tribunal and I did speak with our solicitor to see if there was a way around it. It was not possible.
Okay. So we're clear on that, Mr. David. So I think some of the, maybe what they've suggested, and obviously Planner Spencer's done her due diligence looking for that advice. So carry on, please.
So if, I guess being with that said, we have to continue. So Councillor Noon brought up too about the Saugeen Valley. Basically, everyone's in favor, and the gravel was extracted by the municipality. So I don't feel that's an issue. And if there's new conditions for the new application, I've already spoke with SON, Robert Martin, and he recommended an archaeologist company from London, which we received a quotation from, and it's around $10,000, which we have to plow the field. So they want the field plowed. It has to sit for a couple of rains, and then they're going to walk it, look for any artifacts or anything. So we're willing to do that if Planner Spencer had emailed me and said that was a new condition. So I guess basically we'll see if yous will allow this to go through, then we will carry on and do another condition and use the completion of the old ones to extend into this one. But the entrance permit, it unfortunately dragged on quite long, and we still never did receive the administration portion of it. Tim Cook did his 2 inspections, okayed everything, but we never received any paperwork that I could hand in. So that was another delay that for me coming in with all the conditions completed, because I didn't have that in hand. And Dean has not received the $400 refund. So I'm assuming the paperwork isn't done. But I come in with the conditions regardless because I couldn't keep waiting.
Okay, thank you for your presentation, Mr. David. So I am going to entertain some questions from committee members. If there is any. Or Planner Spencer, before we do that, do you have a response or you want to hear from the members first and then we can, you're good? Okay. Any comments or questions from the committee members? Okay, did you see, well, I see member, did you have your hand up? Member Eccles first, then we'll go to member Noon.
Glenn, the January 12th, 2022, West Gray staff approved the location and returned in the fall of 2022. Was that after the deadline date for that? When was the entrance put in and whatnot, I guess?
Sorry.
We had the driveway installed before the deadline. And Tim came past it, said he would give it over to administration. But we never did receive any paperwork, and I called him a couple of times just to verify that he had handed it in, and he had said that Joyce had retired from that position, someone was hired, that didn't work out, and then someone else was hired, and that's kind of the last I heard from him. So I never did get any correspondence for it to be able to hand in as part of the consent or conditions, sorry.
Follow up, member Eccles.
Yeah, the follow-up would be, is that there? Is it been approved, or is staff waiting, instead of approving it, waiting to see what council does here, or the committee does here, and let it go through or take it out?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So in part, we have the application that was received November 12th of 2021 for the entrance permit. That's my understanding in speaking with the roads department that inspection is pending in order for the entrance to actually be issued. It's not such a matter that's germane to this point today before us. I don't believe that the issue of the entrance is a problem. But issuing the entrance in advance of a decision by committee would have been kind of stepping ahead of the consent application itself and the considerations there.
Any follow-up, member Eccles? No. Member Noon, go ahead, please.
Well, regarding the entrance, in past practices, when an application is submitted, especially for a severance, the application would be copied for the planning department. And then when the applicant informs the office that it's completed, then Tim would make his evaluations and then come forward, and then the paperwork just followed up. So I'm not sure what happened to all that when I had left, but I apologize. I had another question. I just lost my train of thought for that, but yeah, I apologize. Sorry.
Well, that's fine. I think member Hutchinson had a question, so they'll give you a couple minutes to maybe go back and search if you can find it or not. And I will go to member Hutchinson, please.
Yeah, so I guess my question here is, given that we're sort of restarting this process again, it seems to me that there has been a lot of hurdles been cleared. I guess my question to staff is, what needs to happen for this application to be successful? Is it a possibility that it can be successful based on some of the things that seem to be stumbling blocks in the past seem to be cleared? Like what does this gentleman need to do now to move forward with this application?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the conditions were well laid out as part of the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the responsibility was the applicant and or their agent to fulfill those conditions. They were not imposed any differently than they would be applied to another application. Some of those conditions had been continued to be fulfilled by Mr. David, and he has proceeded to continue on with status quo. They didn't meet the deadline. And as I said, we don't have the opportunity to extend that. Really, at the end of the day, it's the decision of the Committee of Adjustment on whether they wish to approve the application against the recommendation of planning staff. If the recommendation is approved, there are a number of conditions that I have outlaid that should be fulfilled and ensured that they have been fulfilled, some of which have been completed, if it's the will of the committee to approve this application.
Okay, thank you.
Follow up, Member Hutchinson?
Well, not at this time. I guess I think I'm willing to move forward with the application. It's unfortunate that, it seems to be a backward process if to go back to the OLT and go through that process again, if that's even possible. But it looks like a lot of the conditions and issues have been resolved. So I'm not sure why we would stop it other than, they missed the deadline. Yeah. And he's explained, why, some of the reasons why. So I tend to be a little bit on the lenient side and would move forward, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Okay, I kind of heard a little bit of a potential motion there, but I do see Member Shea with his hand up, and I'd like to go to Member Shea first, please.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry about that. Yes, I'm kind of leaning towards Member Hutchinson's perspective, but I just wanted to clarify one more time with staff. Sorry if I'm being a little bit thick. Is your primary objection to this that it missed the deadline?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. That is not the issue at hand. The application was approved by the OLT against the recommendation of that time that this does not meet the lot density requirements. It's one of the major policy stumbling blocks with this application for severance. It's not whether the application missed its deadlines for completing conditions. That's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. It's a matter of process. Legally, it had to go back and be considered by Committee of Adjustment again because we have no legal authority to extend the deadline for those conditions.
Follow up, Member Shea?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Member Eccles, please.
Thank you. Are we ahead of here on the second application? Because now SON, the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, has stepped in. And without that report, I don't feel that this is a complete application. We're asking that this report be done, and we don't have the report to even entertain this, do we?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. So those individual comments from Saugeen Ojibwe Nation are fresh comments. So they have not we have no report at a stage one. It takes time, so it's not something that can be done. Should committee choose to approve the application, it can be made a condition. And if a satisfactory archaeological assessment can't be provided, then they would not be able to fulfill condition and the consent would lapse again.
Or we could wait until we get the report on the archaeological study, whether it be from a London team or whoever. Yeah. I wonder if we're jumping the gun again to say with approving an incomplete application without having, approving an incomplete application and putting conditions on it again. Whether we put a time frame on that or not, but I see Mr. David wants to make a comment there.
Mr. David, go ahead, please.
Speaking with Mr. Martin from SON, he said the likelihood of finding anything is very rare, but this is the only opportunity that they get to actually go on to private land. And he said that they're actually lobbying the government to be able to go in at building permit time. So he said, basically his words were, all likelihood there won't be anything found. He recommended this company from London because the two companies here that he gets reports from are booked for the year. So I was in contact with the company from London and they said it's a very small project that they can come up, walk it in one day after we have it plowed and do a report that should satisfy everyone.
Thank you, Mr. David. And I do have one question from the chair that I need some clarity, and Member Eccles has brought it up. And if I will, to Planner Spencer. So the application process, I understand it quite clearly, but if we were to defer this and request that they go get, this further study done, basically the risk, I guess my question is, if we support it in theory with conditions, as we know we've done in the past, then that to me, warrants spending the potential $10,000. If we don't give them support or, support in understanding or in theory for right now, and they spend it and we deny it, that's the part that I'm a little bit hesitant on. And that's just a response to what Member Eccles had said. If I could get a comment on that, just for my own, thank you.
Sure, certainly, and to you, Mr. Chair. So the conditions would have to be fulfilled. So every consent application is accompanied with conditions. It's just standard practice to ensure certain things are done. The Planning Act has changed, so now there is 2 years for those conditions to be fulfilled, where it used to be 12 months. So the only risk here would be that if the application is approved and the stage 1-2 archaeological study comes back and something is found and there's some conditions surrounding that will impact this application. What would happen essentially is that condition would not be able to be fulfilled potentially. And going forward from that point, it would be as though the consent lapsed. So it would have to go back to the Ontario Land Tribunal at that point in time. I would recommend that study needs to at least be a condition, if not provided in advance. And the reason for that is if there is some reason for an appeal, not just from the applicant or their agent, but anyone from the public or et cetera, and we go to an Ontario Land Tribunal in the absence of knowing that the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation is looking for an archaeological stage 1 and 2, then the committee hasn't taken the recommendations into full consideration.
Thank you for your clarity. And I think that it's just with what I know the way the lane you were going down, and I heard that. So I believe Member Noon did have a second. Are you done, Member Eccles? Sorry, before I move on, or want me to come back to you?
I'm thinking.
Okay, Member Noon, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, it pertained to starting again with the second application. And can they bring forward what's already been done into the application as part of that application process? The other thing is the comments originally from Saugeen Valley and the County of Grey, to my understanding when I was reading it, they had no objection to their application. But can the municipality, I'm kind of getting from the municipality, from your expertise, that you can override because of conditions that they didn't really necessarily take serious enough? I'm not sure. I'm trying to understand this whole process. But in saying that, can the municipality override, even though they've, with the previous application, that they supported it? So it just need more clarification. Thank you.
Certainly, and through you, Mr. Chair. So essentially, at the end of the day, the first application is irrelevant at this point in time. So that application has lapsed. It has no validity. It was never granted, and that's it, very strictly laid out from the Ontario Land Tribunal. So this is a new application at hand and has to be reviewed as of the policies in place at the time that the application is received. They certainly can carry over their register plan that they've done, their survey, so to speak, that there's no reason why that can't be carried over. Completion of the entrance permit can be conducted. They have paid the $500 parkland dedication fee, so we're not going to force them to pay it twice. So all of those things that they have done albeit after the deadline for the original first consent can be moved forward. The municipality, from a planning perspective, it's not overriding, it's looking at the application through policy interpretation. So the County of Gray did support the municipality in the last application, and that's where we both ended up at the Ontario Land Tribunal for the first application recommending denial.
Anything further? Remember, no? Comments, questions before we move on? Go ahead, Member Eccles.
I guess this gets back to County Official Plan Amendment number 11. Is it enforced partially, a little bit, or whose understanding do we take on this one?
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. That's a tough one, but so the County of Gray's position differs from mine, that they believe that OPA 11 is in full force and effect, save and except for those portions that are under appeal. I have not seen anything in terms of an order to identify that, but they do have their own personal legal opinion at the county level that differs from the opinion I've received.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
and it gets back to the 15%. So the 40 hectare parcel, that's what it seems to be based on here, would be 3 lots and the retained. Does this put it over the 3 lots that are severed off because of the deviation road, or where are we at on that?
Yeah, so and through you, Mr. Chair, and that is addressed in the report. So the interpretation of that deviation road. So in certain circumstances, when authorities having jurisdiction take land for the purposes of road widenings, et cetera, those are not considered to be severances under considering the density policies of the official plan. In this particular circumstance, there's a very specific clause that states when it creates a separate lot is to be considered a separate lot. And this is clearly a separate lot through the road deviation. So it is included in that density on the original Crown survey.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. Still doesn't make anything clear on where the decision should go. Or easier on where the decision makes it clear.
I'm gonna let you have the final word there, Mr. David. I'm gonna go virtual to the committee members. I think from the committee members virtually. Member Shea or Member Hutch? Go ahead, Member Shea.
Are we on the verge of introducing a motion to approve this with the condition of the archaeological study? Is that if we're at that threshold, I would be happy to make such a motion.
Okay, well, actually, that'll come at item number 7.3, under 7.3 be decision, and I'll be looking for to support the recommendation or to, bring a recommendation forward. So if we have any other comments or questions for this specific application or for Mr. David, I was going to let him have the last word on this one because we are in the public portion, and then I will be going for the recommendation. And if you do have a comment or a question, we can entertain that now. And I see Member Hutchison, you'll have the final say. Go ahead, sir.
Just, I'm going back to the county report that's in the public document from this morning, and just to clarify what the member Eccles was requiring about the lot size. Like in there, it talks about that this subject property is 51 acres or hectares, and then they go on to say that that meets the 15% required maximum lot size. So based on their chart, they're saying that you can have 5 lots on this property. It says in this case, original township lot is 51 hectares, which would fall within the 15% prorated threshold. Subject application would meet road density policies. County planning staff have no concern. So I thought the number of lots on this property was an issue, but yet the county seemed to be saying that they're okay. So I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't want to leave that untouched, but that's just for information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any final comments from committee members or questions before we go to Mr. David for closing comments from the public side? Because we did kind of blend them. So Mr. David, again, the final word. Go ahead, sir.
So I read the Gray County lot density as well, and it's basically saying 5 lots are allowed. So there shouldn't be an issue with that because he's over the 50, he's 51 hectares, which rounds up to 5. And I guess the big question too is, when this is approved, will there be any other conditions added? Because I've already had to do extra conditions. I had to get septic approval, which I've never seen with a severance. I had to get a well report stating we could get water, which I've never done for a severance either. So it just seems that every time we get over one hurdle, there's one more added. So is there going to be more conditions than SON added to this when it proceeds?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Those are the conditions as set out and approved by the committee. So those conditions with respect to the well and septic were conditions as part of the original application. So that wasn't something new that was added. It was identified and clarified as part of the conditions to the OLT, but that condition was always a condition of the severance application back in 2020. So there's no new conditions being added. And if you want to appeal these conditions, you have that right under the Planning Act within 20 days from the date of decision and the notice. The only additional one that's been added with the fresh comments from SON, so that would be for the completion of a stage 1 and 2 archaeological. Additional conditions cannot be added once it's approved by the committee and their decision is provided.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Any closing comments, Mr. David?
All I can say is I hope that it's been approved because all we're trying to do is get a house built and give you lots of revenue from taxes here. And it seems to be a big fight for a little 4-acre parcel that the entire road's full of houses and this would only add to it. So I guess we're at your mercy to see what we can get done here. And it's been a awfully long process is all I can say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yes, Member Noon. I was going to be going to 7.3. I think we spent ample time on this. Go ahead, please.
Ms. Spencer, the archaeological, like when you talk about timeframes, like it's been, they've checked with them. Is there a time frame that has to be done in order to meet if the application should be approved?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So from the date of decision, should committee choose to approve the application, they have 2 years from the date of decision for that to be completed. Provided nothing is found on site as part of the archaeological assessment, they won't need that long for that to be completed, but they do have 2 years from the date of decision with the changes to the Planning Act.
Thank you.
The mic's still on. Joyce. Okay. Well, it's been a very in-depth conversation. Does anybody have any comments before we move on to which is 7.3? I will acknowledge that Member Shea had requested that he would speak to 7.3, which is decision by the committee. Member Shea, this is where you could bring a motion forward or recommendation. So if you're prepared, you can certainly have the floor.
Sure. Thank you. I would move or recommend that in consideration. No, I'm not going to do it that way. That this application be approved. I'm sure the clerk can word that better.
Any conditions or anything? Or I'm going to let Clerk Eckelswiller help you through this one. How's that?
Yeah, sorry, with the condition from the SON.
Through the chair, I'm going to defer to the planner for the conditions for this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the recommended conditions by staff would be the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, if applicable, the payment of the zoning bylaw amendment application fee, which I will note has been received, the receipt of a zoning bylaw amendment, the payment of an entrance permit fee for the newly created parcel. As discussed, the refund is required once inspected, and the receipt of an acceptable entrance permit for the newly created parcel, which is still outstanding, payment of the $500 parkland dedication fee, which has been paid, and finally, the completion of a favorable stage 1 and 2 archaeological study.
There, did that capture everything, Member Shea?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, any comments or questions? We've got a motion on the floor. Any comments or questions? Or I'm looking for a seconder, actually. So if I can get a seconder, then we'll go. Okay, Member Noon. So that's moved and seconded. Now, any comments or questions from the committee members on this one? Member Eccles, go ahead, please.
Are we saying that the archaeological study, if I'm understanding it, it usually starts at stage 1 and might get bumped up to stage 2? But the requirement here was that a stage 1 and stage 2 be done?
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So stage 1's typically when they can do a desktop analysis. Stage 2 is the actual field work. So Mr. Martin has requested stage 1 and stage 2, which is a very common request for archaeological studies.
All right. And depending on what comes with stage 2, just for clarification, it may get bumped up again. And is there four stages to that? Yeah. It's more in depth as you go deeper. Thank you.
Okay, would anybody like the recommendation? We have it moved by Member Shea, second by Member Noon. Would we like to hear that back before I call the vote? And who would, clerk, would you have, who would have that? Planner Spencer, you got the wording on that one? If you could, please.
And so the recommendation is that file application, sorry, I should say the recommendation, but for file B09 2023 to be approved subject to the following conditions: the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, payment of the zoning bylaw amendment application fee, the receipt of a zoning bylaw amendment, payment of an entrance permit fee for the newly created parcel, the receipt of an acceptable entrance permit for the newly created parcel, payment of the $500 parkland dedication fee, and finally, the receipt of a favorable archaeological assessment. So these conditions must be met by May 2nd of 2025, in which time there'll be an additional 12 months for the deeds to be stamped for the lot to officially be created.
Okay, thank you for the clarity on that. Is everybody clear on the recommendation before us? Okay, no comments or questions. Call the vote. All those in favor of the recommendation, put your hand up. I see all members are in favor. There's none opposed. That motion has carried. Now I will go to 7.4, which is Planner Spencer. What would be the next steps, please?
Following the decision of this committee, the applicant will be notified of the decision, at which time there will be a 20-day appeal period. Provided no appeals are received, the applicant will be advised that they can proceed to fulfill the balance of the conditions as outlined earlier in the meeting today.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation this afternoon. We are going to move on to item number 8 on today's agenda, and that's the consent to sever B11-2023-451 Countess Street South. 8.1 is Planner Spencer's report. Planner Spencer, we can please read your report, including any written comments or you may have received for this one. Planner Spencer.
Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of this application is to sever approximately 0.09 hectares of residential land and retain approximately 0.09 hectares of residential land, the effect of which will facilitate the construction of a semi-detached dwelling unit on the newly created lot. There is a recommendation for this file with conditions that in consideration of staff report B11-2023 for JT Excavating Limited, Cobide Engineering, Inc., that the Committee of Adjustment provide provisional consent subject to the following conditions: the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, the payment of the zoning bylaw amendment application fee, the receipt of a zoning bylaw amendment, the payment of an entrance permit fee for the newly created parcel, the receipt of an acceptable entrance permit fee for the newly created parcel, and finally, payment of the $500 parkland dedication fee. Comments have been provided from the County of Grey in addition to the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. Comments are also provided by Hydro One and Enbridge Gas. There were no comments that identified significant concerns with the application, and no comments from the public were received to this office at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. So 8.2 is verbal comments. Again, there's two parts to this part of the meeting. First one is the committee members to speak, and that will be followed by the public members or public comments. So under 8.2.1, committee members, is there any questions or comments on this application? Okay, seeing none, I am going to move on to 8.2.2. This is public comments. Again, I'm going to ask Ms. Ferguson to explain to the public virtually how they can participate. And we have no one in the audience who would like to speak to it for clarity. Thank you. Ms. Ferguson.
Through you, Chair Hutchinson, for members of the public waiting to participate in this portion of the meeting, if you have joined us via phone line, you can press *9 to raise your hand, and that will let us know that you would like to speak. If you've joined us using the Zoom meeting software, you can also raise your hand, usually located in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen with a blue or yellow hand icon. And at this time, Chair, there is one member of the public that wishes to speak. Their name is not listed.
Well, thank you very much. And we do have a member online virtually that would like to speak to this file. So if you could unmute yourself, or if you can unmute Ms. Ferguson, then what we'll do is just have you state your name for the record and go ahead with your comments, please.
Hi, my name is Sharon Mote, and I just wanted some better understanding to Bill 11-2023.
So you're looking for, could you be a little more clear on what you were looking for? I apologize. couldn't hear you.
We're, like I mentioned earlier, we're new to the area, so I don't understand why we are part of the meeting and what is the meeting in regards to. I'm sorry, I'm not up to date with all the bill registrations or anything. So as a house owner, I just wanted to know what is this in regards to, as I have now taken off time for work to attend this meeting that I'm not even sure what it is in regards to.
Okay, I'll have Planner Spencer explain to you why you were notified.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, and through you, Mr. Chair. So the Planning Act requires when applications such as this for severance in this example come forward, everyone within 120 meters is notified of the meeting. Attendance is not required. It's a notification for courtesy purposes. If you wanted to provide comment with respect to the application, you could also have done so in writing. This wasn't a mandatory attendance, but this is the requirements of the Planning Act that notification is provided in that way.
And what is the planning exactly?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the applicant before you, as noted in the notice, is requesting a consent to create a new lot. This will facilitate the construction of a semi-detached dwelling unit on the property once that consent is granted.
Oh, that's pretty much started. I think that would be great. And bring more people to the area. Okay, never mind. Thank you guys for doing that and taking the time out.
No, well, thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you
Sorry
for
about
calling in
that.
for clarification on it too. It's
No
always good to
problem.
attend.
Sorry about that. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, Ms. Ferguson, anybody else online? One more? Okay, so if they would like to unmute, or if you can unmute them, if they could state their name for the record and please make their comment or question. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, it's Dana Kiefer, planner for the applicant. Just wanted to chime into council for this nice little infill projects that's being proposed. So this is a double lot on the original town plot of Durham. So the first severance that is before you right now is going to split those into 2 lots. The proponent is planning to build a semi-detached dwelling. So we will be before you again for a zoning bylaw amendment to facilitate that. And then we will be before you for a 3rd time, and we will sever that semi-detached dwelling once those foundations are in the ground. But yes, so from where we are now with one house on 1 large lot, at the end of the development concept will be 3 houses on 3 lots of records. Happy to answer any questions that council may have, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Well, thank you. We look forward to working with you in the future. I think I do see one question from member Hutchinson. Go ahead, please.
Maybe this lady can explain something to me that I've been sort of curious about. Can you explain the difference between a semi-detached and a duplex?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So essentially it's how they're joined horizontally or vertically under the definitions of the zoning bylaw. So in this particular case, they would be separated by a horizontal wall, hence the second application to come back, so that once this semi-detached unit is established, that lot line between the 2 properties can be evenly divided on the common wall.
And so a duplex doesn't have that common wall? I'm fuzzy on how that works.
Yeah, I can provide you with the exact definition of the duplex, but it's really how the two are joined. So one is vertical, one is horizontal.
Okay, thank you.
Any other last comments from the committee members? Okay, so we're at 8.3 and that's decision. So we do have a recommendation here. So what direction would the committee like to take with this application? And again, we can read out the application, right, or the recommendation, or I could have Planner Spencer do that if you feel that you'd rather have go that way. Member Hutchinson, go ahead. Thank you very much.
Move that we move ahead with the recommendations as per the planner's report.
Okay, and I will have the planner read those, and I'm looking for a seconder, please. Member Forrester. Planner Spencer, if I could have you read the recommendation, then we'll call the vote, please. Thank you.
The recommendation is for approval of application B11 2023, subject to the following conditions: the payment of any outstanding municipal taxes, the payment of the zoning bylaw amendment application fee, the receipt of a zoning bylaw amendment, payment of an entrance permit for the fee for the newly created parcel, the receipt of an acceptable entrance permit for the newly created parcel, and finally, payment of the $500 parkland dedication fee. Provisional consent will be subject to all of these conditions being met by May 2nd of 2025.
Thank you. Comments or questions from the committee members before we call the vote? Member Eccles, go ahead, please.
Dealing with Bill 23 and density levels and whatnot, does this meet our density levels for West Gray, and we can send that into the province and tell Mr. Ford that we're doing our best to get that 1.5 million houses? And we're done now?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's one step moving forward, I suppose, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Lorraine.
Thank you, Planner Spencer, for your well thought out response there. Okay. We have the recommendation before us. We have it moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions? We call the vote. All those in favor, you can just raise your hand, please. I see all are in favor. There's none opposed, so this motion has carried. That'll take us to 8.4. That'll be next steps. Planner Spencer, please.
Now, following the decision of this committee for approval of the application, the applicant will and their agent will be notified that the application has been approved with the conditions that are required to be fulfilled within a 24-month time period. In addition, there will be the 20-day appeal period that follows, and provided no appeals are received, they will be advised that they should continue fulfilling the conditions associated with the file. Thank you.
Thank you, Planner Spencer. Thank you once again for your detailed reports today. Item number 9 on today's agenda is the next meeting, and that is scheduled for June the 6th, 2023, and that will be at 2 p.m. Again, that will be a hybrid. Item number 10 is adjournment. I do not need a mover or seconder. I can declare that the meeting is adjourned, and everyone have a wonderful afternoon.